It was exactly 1:03 a.m. when my phone began to ring. The sound cut through the silence of my small, dimly lit room like a blade. I blinked awake, groggy, irritated, until I saw the name flashing across the screen. Daniel. My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I rubbed them, leaned closer, and there it was again. His name, clear as day. My son's name. The same name I hadn't seen light up my phone in 10 long years. The same name engraved on a headstone I visit every year on his birthday. My hands began to shake. I didn't even realize tears had already begun streaming down my face. The phone kept ringing, each vibration feeling like a pulse of the past coming alive again. I whispered, "No, it can't be," but something deep inside me, a mix of fear, hope, and desperation, made me answer. "Hello?" My voice trembled, barely audible. At first, there was only silence. Just the faint crackle of static, like someone breathing through a bad connection. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then faintly, so faintly I almost thought I imagined it, a voice whispered, "Mom." Every bone in my body froze. It was his voice. His exact voice. Not the grown man he would have been, but the voice I remembered from the night he left this world, a young boy's voice, soft, warm, trembling. I covered my mouth, sobbing. "Daniel, is that Daniel, baby? Is that you?" He didn't answer right away. I could hear something like wind or maybe waves behind him. Then the voice came again, fragile but real. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to leave you." I fell to my knees, clutching the phone. "No, no, no, don't say that, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong." My words came out broken. "Where are you? What's happening?" The line crackled, the sound fading in and out. "It's dark here," he whispered, "but I see you. You're sad all the time. Don't cry for me anymore." "Daniel," I cried, louder this time, panicking as the static grew stronger. "Please don't go. Please tell me where you are." Then for a split second, I thought I heard something else, a man's voice, older, deeper, calling his name in the background. And just like that, the line went dead. The screen went black. I tried calling back immediately, my fingers shaking, but the number said unavailable. Not disconnected, not unknown, just unavailable. I sat there staring at the phone, my whole body trembling. For 10 years, I'd prayed for a sign, any sign, that my son was at peace. But now that something had finally happened, I didn't know whether I'd just spoken to his spirit or something else entirely. The next morning, I couldn't shake it off. The sound of his voice kept replaying in my mind. I went to his room, still just as I'd left it a decade ago. The old baseball glove, the posters, the half-broken night lamp he refused to throw away. Dust covered everything, but his presence, it was there, thick in the air. I sat on his bed and whispered, "If that was really you, Daniel, please, give me another sign." And then from the corner of the room, something fell. A framed photo. Our favorite one had slipped from the shelf. I picked it up, heart racing. It wasn't shattered, it had simply landed face down. When I turned it over, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A small, fresh fingerprint smudged in the corner of the glass. A child's fingerprint. I hadn't touched that frame in years. And that's when I realized, maybe this wasn't just a coincidence. Maybe something, or someone was trying to tell me there was more to his story than I ever knew. The next few nights, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made me jump. Every shadow seemed alive. I kept the phone beside me on the pillow, waiting, half terrified, half desperate, for it to ring again. It didn't. By the third night, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I drove to Daniel's grave. It was cold, the kind of cold that clings to your bones. The cemetery was quiet, blanketed by mist. My headlights stretched across rows of headstones until I saw his Daniel Moore, 203. And if you're out there somewhere, please, just give me a sign, anything. The wind stirred, soft but deliberate, and for a split second, I could swear I smelled him, that familiar scent of his shampoo, the one that always lingered after he'd come in from soccer practice. My eyes filled with tears. "I miss you so much, sweetheart." I sat there for a long time, talking to him like I used to, about my days, about how lonely it had been since he was gone. The silence didn't answer, but it felt like he was listening. As I stood to leave, I noticed something at the base of the headstone, a folded piece of paper, slightly damp from the dew. I frowned, picking it up carefully. The edges were crinkled, but the writing was still visible. It was a drawing, a child's drawing, a little boy standing beside a woman, holding hands, both smiling under a big yellow sun. Underneath, in messy handwriting, it said "Mom and me forever." My knees buckled. I pressed the paper to my chest, shaking. That exact drawing used to hang on our refrigerator when Daniel was alive. I'd kept it in a keepsake box in my closet at home, but when I raced back to check that night, the box was open, its contents scattered, and that same drawing was missing. That was the moment I stopped trying to rationalize it. Something was happening, something I didn't understand. The next day, I took the phone to a repair shop, hoping maybe there was a technical explanation, maybe someone spoofed the number, maybe it was a glitch. The technician, a young man with tattoos on his wrist, examined it for nearly an hour before looking up, puzzled. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "the call logs show that number dialed you, but it doesn't exist in any carrier record. It's like it came from nowhere." I felt the room spin. "What do you mean, nowhere?" He shrugged uneasily. "Sometimes old disconnected numbers can ping for a second, but this one, it's been off the grid for 10 years, since," he hesitated, then added softly, "since the date you said your son passed." I left the store trembling, the cold air hitting my face like a slap. Nothing made sense. Every logical part of my brain said this was impossible. But the mother in me, the part that had felt that voice, that scent, that warmth, knew something deeper was reaching out. That night, I lit a candle in Daniel's room. I sat on the floor beside his bed, holding that drawing in my hands, and whispered, "If there's something you want me to know, Daniel, if there's something you couldn't tell me before you left, I'm listening." For a moment, nothing happened. Then my phone vibrated once. No ringtone, no number, just a text, from unknown. "Mom, please stop crying. Look for the truth about that night." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. The truth about that night. But I thought I already knew. He died in an accident. That's what they told me. That's what everyone said. My hands began to shake as a thought crept into my mind, one I'd buried for years. The police report had always felt incomplete. The timelines never added up perfectly. And the last person who'd seen Daniel alive. That night, I couldn't stop replaying those words in my mind. Look for the truth about that night. They echoed in the quiet like a whisper that refused to fade. The night Daniel died had always been a blur in my memory, a jagged wound I never dared to reopen. He'd gone to a friend's birthday party just a few streets away. His father, my ex-husband, Mark, had offered to pick him up because I was working late at the hospital. But sometime between leaving the party and coming home, everything went wrong. The police said it was an accident, a hit and run. Daniel was found near the edge of the main road, his bike twisted, his phone shattered. They said whoever hit him didn't stop. No witnesses, no camera, just tragedy. I believed it because I needed to. The truth was too painful to question. Until now, I didn't sleep. At dawn, I called Mark. He sounded startled to hear from me. "Sarah, is everything okay?" "No," I said quietly. "I need to talk to you about Daniel." There was silence on the line, then a sigh. "Sarah, it's been 10 years. Why are you doing this to yourself again?" "Because I got a message," I said, "from Daniel's number." He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight. "That's not fun." "I'm not joking, Mark." My hands trembled as I held the phone. "It wasn't a prank." I heard his voice, and he said I should look for the truth about that night. I could hear his breathing quicken. "That's impossible." "Then tell me, Mark." Was there something you didn't tell me?" He paused. "I told you everything." But his tone betrayed him. He sounded defensive, uneasy, like someone afraid of being cornered by ghosts he'd tried to forget. "Please," I said softly, "if there's even the smallest thing you've kept from me, I need to know." He hesitated for what felt like forever. Then he whispered, "Meet me tomorrow. Same place we used to take Daniel for ice cream, 6 p.m. Before I could say another word, he hung up. All day, my mind was racing. I dug through old files, the police report, news clippings, even the detective's notes. Something in me had shifted. I wasn't grieving anymore. I was searching. When I got to the ice cream shop that evening, Mark was already there. He looked older, tired, with streaks of gray in his hair and guilt in his eyes. We sat down at a corner table. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "What aren't you telling me?" He rubbed his temples, looking haunted. "I didn't lie," he said quietly. "But I didn't tell you everything either." I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "Go on." He stared at his hands. "That night, I was late picking him up, by about 20 minutes. When I got there, he wasn't outside. His friends said he left on his bike because he didn't want to wait anymore." My stomach twisted. "I know that part. It's in the report." He nodded. "But what the report doesn't say is that when I finally found him, before the paramedics arrived, he was still alive." I froze. "What?" Tears welled in his eyes. He looked at me and said, "Dad, I didn't mean to." Those were his last words. "And I never told you because I didn't understand what he meant. I didn't want to make you live with more questions than answers." I could barely breathe. "Didn't mean to what?" Mark shook his head. "I don't know. But there's something else. A few months ago, the old detective on the case called me. He said new information came up. Something about the car that hit Daniel." My pulse quickened. "What kind of information?" She swallowed hard. "They traced a fragment of paint from the vehicle. It belonged to an old blue pickup truck. The same kind of truck that." He hesitated, his eyes flicking to me. "That what, Mark?" I demanded. "The same kind of truck that used to belong to your brother." The world tilted. My brother, David, the one person who'd been with Daniel at that party, the one who'd helped organize it, the one who'd comforted me at the funeral, saying over and over that it wasn't anyone's fault, the one who'd left town a few weeks later and never came back. My throat tightened. "You're saying my brother?" "I don't know," Mark said quickly. "I'm saying it's a coincidence that doesn't feel like one anymore." I sat there in stunned silence, my mind spiraling. All this time I'd thought I'd buried my son, but maybe I'd buried the truth instead. And if Daniel's voice was really reaching out to me from somewhere beyond, maybe he was trying to tell me exactly who had taken him away. The next morning, I woke with a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. The world felt quieter than usual, as if it too was waiting for something to break. My brother's name echoed in my mind, like a secret I wasn't supposed to know. David and I had always been close growing up. He was the wild one, the charmer, the one who never really grew out of breaking rules and laughing about it later, but he loved Daniel, or at least I thought he'd. They were inseparable. My brother would pick him up from school, teach him how to throw a ball, spoil him with candy when I wasn't looking. After Daniel's death, David had changed overnight. He stopped coming around. He didn't call. And when I asked him once, through tears, why he couldn't even talk about Daniel anymore, he just said, "I can't, Sarah. You wouldn't understand." Then he left town. I told myself it was grief, but now, maybe it was guilt. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my old contacts, and found his number. It had been years since I dialed it. My finger hovered over the call button. I didn't know what I wanted to hear, an explanation, an apology, or just a voice that would make this all make sense. The phone rang 4 times before someone picked up. "Hello?" The voice was rough, cautious. I swallowed hard. "David, it's me." There was a pause. "Sarah? What's wrong?" My throat tightened. "I need to talk to you, about Daniel." Silent. Then in a lower tone he said, "Sarah, why now?" "Because his number called me," I said, my voice shaking. "And because I think there's something you haven't told me." Another long silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end, heavy and uneven. Then he said quietly, "Where are you?" "At home. I'll come by tonight," he said. "But Sarah, maybe some things are better left buried." "Not this," I whispered. "Not my son." He didn't answer. The line went dead. All day I felt like I was moving through fog. My thoughts collided, memories of Daniel's laughter, of David teaching him to ride a bike, of the night police lights flashed outside our house. I sat by the window clutching that drawing Daniel had somehow returned to me, wondering what kind of truth could be so dark. My own brother had run from it for 10 years. When David finally arrived that evening, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked older, worn down by time and secret. His hair had gone gray at the edges, and his eyes, once sharp and mischievous, were haunted. He stood at the doorway for a long moment before saying softly, "You still keep his room the same." I nodded. I couldn't change. He stepped inside slowly, glancing around like he was walking through a dream. He loved those glow-in-the-dark stars, he murmured, looking up at the ceiling. I helped him stick them up. "Why are you really here, David?" I asked. "What happened that night?" He didn't answer right away. He sat down on Daniel's bed, his hands trembling slightly. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said finally. My heart pounded. "You were there, weren't you?" He nodded, staring at the floor. "Yeah." After the party ended, Daniel said he'd ride home. It was dark, and I told him I'd follow in the truck just to make sure he got home safe. He laughed and said I didn't need to. His voice cracked. He was turning onto the main road, and a car swerved out of nowhere. I panicked. I hit the brakes too late. I stopped, ran to him, tried to wake him up, but he stopped talking, tears spilling down his face. I didn't know what to do. I froze. Then I saw headlights. I thought they'd think I saw that. I felt my knees go weak. "You left him?" He nodded, barely able to meet my eyes. I drove off and called Mark from the next street. I told him I'd seen a kid hurt on the road. I didn't say it was Daniel. I thought maybe he'd still make it. I thought if I said nothing it would be like it never happened. I stared at him, the world spinning around me. All those years of grief, all those sleepless nights, and my own brother had been carrying the truth in silence. He looked up at me then, broken. "Sarah, I've lived with it every day. Every night I hear his voice." I tried to end it once, but I couldn't. "And when you said his number called you," his voice trembled. "Maybe it was him. Maybe he wants me to tell you." I was crying now, not just from pain but from disbelief. "Why didn't you come to me, David? Why didn't you let me bury him knowing the truth?" "Because I couldn't bear to see what it would do to you," he whispered. "I already killed my nephew. Sarah, I couldn't kill you too." I stood there, shaking, torn between rage and heartbreak. I wanted to scream, to hit him, to forgive him, all at once. Before I could speak, my phone buzzed. Both of us froze. It was the same unknown number. The message read, "Thank you, Mom. I'm not angry anymore." My hands trembled as I showed the screen to David. His face crumpled. He whispered, "He knows." The phone buzzed one more time. "Uncle David, it's okay now. Go home." Then the message vanished. The entire thread, every call, every text, disappeared from my phone. We just stood there in silence, the air thick with something that felt both heavy and holy. David covered his face, sobbing. I sat beside him, resting my hand on his shoulder. "He forgave you," I whispered. "And maybe that's what he wanted all along." He nodded, tears falling freely. "Maybe he wanted to set us both free." For the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel haunted. I felt lighter, like my boy had finally found peace, and somehow, so had I. A few days later, the world outside looked calm again, soft winter sunlight slipping through the trees, quiet air that almost felt forgiving. But inside me, something had shifted forever. It wasn't closure, not really. You don't close something like that. It was more like the wound had stopped bleeding, even if the scar would always stay. David called me that morning. His voice was softer, steadier than before. "Sarah," he said, "I think we should go see him, together." I didn't hesitate this time. "Yes, we owe him that." We drove in silence, both lost in thought, the hum of the car blending with the ache in our chests. The cemetery sat on a small hill just outside town, peaceful, with rows of white stones glinting in the pale light. As we walked toward Daniel's grave, my hands trembled, but not from fear. It was the weight of 10 years, 10 years of pain, confusion, and love that never found its place. When I saw his name carved in stone again, my knees weakened. I traced my fingers over the letters like I was touching his face. Daniel James Evans, forever in our hearts. David knelt beside me, his eyes wet. He was the best part of me, he said softly. I don't deserve to be standing here. I turned to him. You made a mistake, David, a terrible one, but you didn't run from this moment, not now. That means something. He shook his head. You don't have to forgive me. I looked up at the gray sky, tears spilling freely. I think Daniel already did. For a long while we didn't speak. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it a strange warmth, almost like someone breathing peace into the world. Then, out of nowhere, a gentle chime echoed through the still air. I frowned and reached into my bag. My phone screen had lit up. No number, just one line of text. Thank you for coming, Mom. My heart stopped. I looked at David, who was staring at the screen, wide-eyed. Do you see this? He nodded slowly. Yeah, I think he's here. And then before my eyes, the message faded, the screen going completely blank. But something about that moment felt final, as if he was saying goodbye not out of sadness, but peace. David took a shaky breath. You know, I used to dream about him every night. He'd be standing near that old tree in the park, smiling, like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't. Maybe this was it. I reached over and held his hand, something I hadn't done since we were kids. He wanted you to forgive yourself too. He nodded, his voice breaking. I'll try. We sat there until the sun dipped behind the horizon, the sky turning golden and soft. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like I'd lost my son. I felt like he'd just gone somewhere I couldn't reach yet. But he was okay. He wasn't angry. When we stood to leave, a small gust of wind passed us, lifting a single white feather that floated gently to the ground between us. David picked it up, staring at it with trembling hands. He smiled faintly. He always said feathers meant angels. I smiled through tears. Maybe he's closer than we think. As we walked back to the car, the world didn't feel quite as heavy anymore. The guilt, the questions, the silence, all of it had started to loosen its grip. What remained was love, a love that had survived even death, even lies, even the years between us. That night, when I got home, I placed Daniel's drawing, the one that had somehow returned to me, on my bedside table. For the first time in a decade, I whispered goodnight, not goodbye, and as I turned off the light, I swore I heard it, a faint familiar voice, full of warmth and peace. Good night, Mom. You know, I used to think grief was something you survived, something that eventually faded with time, like an old scar, but it doesn't. It becomes a part of you, quiet, heavy, but still alive. It changes the way you see everything. For 10 long years, I carried a pain that I thought was mine alone. I cried until I had no tears left. I screamed into empty rooms, and I begged for just one more moment, one more chance to hear his voice, and somehow, in the strangest, most impossible way, I did. That night, when Daniel's number called me, I thought it was a cruel trick, but now I know, it wasn't a prank, or some random glitch. It was my son, reaching through the veil, not to haunt me, but to heal me, to tell me that love doesn't end when a heartbeat stops, that forgiveness can reach even the places we think are too broken to fix. My brother, David, he made a mistake that shattered all of us, but my son, my sweet boy, he forgave him, he forgave us, and in that forgiveness, I found something I'd lost a long time ago. I'll never stop missing him. I'll never stop wishing I could hold him just once more. But I've learned something I want you to remember. If you've ever lost someone you love, they don't leave us, not really. They find ways, soft ways, to remind us they're still here. In a song, in a dream, in a whisper that comes when the world is quiet. They live in the space between one heartbeat and the next. So when the night feels too heavy, when the grief feels endless, listen, because sometimes, love speaks from the other side, and when it does, you'll know. Wasn't me.